So here's a quick way to quickly ruin your story as told by Arcane, League of Legends, and Rebel Moon. Step 1. Focus on style more than substance. It's no secret that style plays an important role in any form of media, whether it be live action, animation, music, the written word, or whatever. It's the sauce that adds spiciness to your work. It's that garnish that turns your dish from an amateur effort to what looks like a gourmet experience. However, there is a big caveat when adding style to your work. There always has to be substance that backs it up. There's a balance to be struck, and it's a pretty tricky one to hit. That balance was very well met by Arcane, for Tish and the writers had a very clear connection that led to the vision of the creators and the animators combining into this incredibly synergistic work of art. I mean, you can pause any scene in any episode of the series and have it printed into a really awesome poster. So, if you quickly want to ruin a great story, then of course you should follow this movie called Rebel Moon. Now, there's no debating that Rebel Moon has its own aesthetic and style. It's one of the things that Zack Snyder does best. And in all fairness, he does it well. The outfits look nice and on theme, the overall design of the setting and world building is great, and the color grading, fight choreography, and cinematography of the film is actually pretty high up there. Put that all together, and you actually have a pretty good looking movie. And that's all you really need. When the first entry of a franchise looks good, who needs the actual substance to add to the experience, right? I mean, you can just look at how nice everything is for 2 hours without really immersing yourself in the story or the world, right? Right? Step 2. Slow motion. Okay, so style is one thing, but if you really want to make the moments of your movie or your series really special, there's another way to do it, and it's called slow motion. Okay, so when do you want to use this? Well, if you want to tell your audience that this scene is important or epic or cool, or if you just want them to pay attention, then the answer is almost always slow motion. Let's take Arcane for example. Arcane uses slow motion for a lot of instances. Not as often as Rebel Moon, but there are specific times when they make sure to use slow motion. These times are when they want to emphasize something cool or important, like we said. In Rebel Moon's case, since we're all about style here, why not make almost everything in slow motion? I mean, running into battle, slow motion. Jumping, slow motion. Random events that might look cool, slow motion. I mean, if you just let it play out like a regular shot, then you rob the audience of a scene that could have been dramatic or full of tension. You put in slow motion into almost any random stuff, well, now you're just robbing them of seconds of their lives at regular or random intervals. So really, what good is injecting drama and tension into a scene naturally if you can just force it and artificially create it by using slow motion? Step 3. Make it unoriginal. Mark Twain once said, "There is no such thing as a new idea. It is impossible. We simply take a lot of old ideas and put them into a sort of mental kaleidoscope. We give them a turn, and they make new and curious combinations. We keep on turning and making new combinations indefinitely, but they are the same old pieces of colored glass that have been in use through all the ages." The quote is basically saying that all works of art are made from something existing. It's basically saying that everything is, well, derivative. We take parts that we like from some things and we give our own spin to it. We give it a different form or shape, yet it's still vaguely the same. We can say that about Arcane and we can say that about Rebel Moon. That's why when Arcane subverted all the tried and true formulas that normal adaptations follow, their fresh take quickly drew in praises from critics and audiences alike. But what if you want to quickly ruin your story? If so, then just grab a successful franchise's movie script, move some things around, change some names or maybe not, and tell the story almost the exact same way. I mean, people have compared Rebel Moon to Star Wars, Seven Samurai, A Bug's Life, Warhammer, and Dune. And to be totally honest, those are some pretty good references to start with. But what if we just take all the elements that made those movies great without giving them a creative spin and mix them up into one big story that we've all seen and or read before? Wouldn't that be better? At least you know what to expect. So if you want to make a movie that doesn't really rock the boat and just fulfills everybody's expectations of the given cliches and tropes, then Rebel Moon is a pretty good reference. Step 4. Catch the world builder's disease. What is the world builder's disease? Well, it's a sickness that writers often get when they try to shape every nook and cranny of the universe or world that they created. They make all these places, creatures, magic, civilizations, and all the things you can fill a universe with, and then they forget to tell the story. Arcane only had 2 cities where the story took place, and look at how much substance they were able to cram into the story. Rebel Moon corrected this by adding a multitude of worlds that they never really explored but you get to see. I mean, like I said, having style and looking good is enough, right? Step 5. Scale it up. Building on the world builder's disease, you can actually make it worse by playing around with the scale of the story that you're working on. As I said, Arcane only has 2 cities that the story revolves around. How can you feel the scale of a world in 2 cities? Well, Rebel Moon came up with a solution for that, and it's quite literal. Make more worlds. Make so many worlds that the audience and characters have a hard time keeping up with them. Mention a world that they haven't been to and apply some significance to it without really explaining it or making the audience experience the impact of that world. Remember, more worlds will automatically mean more scale. Step 6. Create characters that are walking tropes. Realistically speaking, you can never really avoid tropes, and that really isn't bad. Tropes have been there since the birth of all stories, and truthfully, there will be even more tropes as time goes on. In fact, Arcane and Rebel Moon actually share a lot of tropes. It's funny how one is considered a masterpiece, and one was, well, not. Some tropes that they share are the strong female heroine, the fallen heroes, time skips, are we the baddies trope, the right-hand man trope, and the prison break trope. How can these 2 franchises have so many tropes in common while their critical receptions have been so vastly different? Well, the thing that Arcane did wrong was that it just gave a little more effort at trying to make their characters rise above the tropes. Let's take Sevika for example. She embodies the right-hand man trope, or in this case woman. Arcane dove in a bit more into her character, and we actually see more depth in her. Compare this to what Rebel Moon did, who just stuck to the actual right-hand man trope and not delve deeper into Atticus Noble's character. I mean, really, who would you want to watch more? Somebody who's a little more unpredictable? Somebody who can defy your expectations? Or somebody who's going to follow an archetype to the letter? Step 7. Make characters unrelatable. So remember when I told you that Rebel Moon was actually being compared to A Bug's Life? Well, that's because they also based it on Seven Samurai. In Seven Samurai, a large portion of the movie is them going around recruiting characters to help them beat the big baddie. It's actually the same for Rebel Moon. And for the larger portion of the story, they were able to do just that. They're able to find a set of characters that are willing to risk their lives for their cause, and they were able to do it by going around the galaxy and conveniently finding specific planets where these characters were at. Here's what you need to remember. After going to recruit all these characters that were worlds apart, do not expand on them or their personalities. Do not give them any more context than a brief scene of them explaining their 2-sentence backstory. If you're able to do this, then you'll have a movie that will be effortless to watch. It will become so effortless that the audience won't need to feel connected to anyone. And that's good, right? That makes it easy. That way, they won't need to invest any emotional energy into the movie. I mean, take Arcane for example. Arcane had a respectable amount of side characters. You get to know them even if they're only on screen for a few minutes. But do you really want that? Do you really want a compelling side character that's making you work hard to get to know them? Will the audience really need the payoff of having to see the characters on screen deal with issues that they can relate to or make them think? I don't really think so. Step 8. Create characters, then completely forget about them. Aside from making your characters unrelatable, make sure that once you introduce them into your story, just throw them into the ship and forget about them. Think of it like playing a game of Pokemon and making all the useful Pokemon you have wait inside the Pokeball until you need to use them. I mean, you only have 2 movies that are almost 2 hours each to work on these characters. Why would you waste time giving them more dimension? Why would you try to make your audience care about them and add weight to their actions and their choices? If you do that, then the audience will care too much when something happens to them. If you go the Arcane route of developing characters even slightly, then audiences will form connections with your characters. When that happens, they'll be emotionally invested with what happens to them. They can feel sad if a character they like has something bad happen to them, or they can feel happy when something bad happens to a character they don't like. Why would you want that? This video wasn't really made to rag on Rebel Moon, I just made it as a light way to highlight the lost potential of what could have been. This was an avenue for me to organize my thoughts, and hopefully coherently sum things up that I observed from the movie. After all, I'm just a geek who consumes a lot of sci-fi and fantasy. I have a deep appreciation of them, and I just want them to do well. I'll be exploring more of this in my next video, which I hope you can see here once I'm finished doing it. But until then, peace and have a great day. Hope to see you there.